right, today on Global WarWatch Network, we're tackling something huge, Putin's latest ultimatum to Europe.
Welcome to the channel. We're going to walk you through exactly what went down, why it's such a big deal, and really what this all means for the future of security in Europe.
And hey, if you want to stay on top of global security, this is the place to be. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Okay, let's get into it. I mean, listen to this. Europe really did not see this coming. Putin just laid down a direct warning, a warning that could literally reshape the entire security landscape of Europe, practically overnight. Okay, so first up, let's talk about Putin's ready right now warning. And you'll see what's so critical here isn't just what he said, but when he said it. The timing was absolutely calculated for maximum impact. So here are his exact words. He says, "We are not going to fight Europe, but if Europe suddenly wants to fight and starts, we are ready right now." What's so clever about this language is how it positions Russia as the defender, right? He's basically saying, hey, we don't want a conflict. He's framing any potential war as something Europe would start. It's a classic chess move, a message that sounds almost passive, but it's designed to deliver the biggest possible threat. And this is where that timing becomes crystal clear. This was no random comment. It was issued on the exact day U.S. envoys landed in Moscow for these incredibly high-stakes peace talks. Think about it. In the morning, the envoys arrive. Midday, Putin drops its bombshell ready for war warning. And then, in the afternoon, they all sit down for a 5-hour meeting. He basically forced the entire negotiation to happen under the shadow of this massive direct threat. So you're probably asking, what were these talks even about? Well, that brings us to the high-stakes peace plan that was on the table. And let me tell you, the proposal itself was, let's just say it was extremely controversial. So the original proposal from the U.S. had 28 points, and it reportedly sent waves of panic through NATO allies. And when you look at the details, you can totally see why. It included recognizing Russian control over Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk. It talked about freezing the conflict lines everywhere else. And get this, capping Ukraine's military at a certain number, say 600,000 personnel. It even called for Ukraine to change its constitution so it could never join NATO. And in return for all that, Russia gets sanctions lifted and a seat back at the G8. It was a huge list of concessions. Well, as you can imagine, European allies pushed back, and they pushed back hard. That led to a revised, shorter 19-point plan. The whole point of this new version was to try and limit those Russian gains. And this was the actual document on the table when the U.S. envoys walked into the Kremlin just hours after Putin had made his ultimatum. So, the stage is set. But despite all those revisions, the talks just hit a complete brick wall. And the reason is simple. There were totally unbridgeable red lines on both sides. No room to move. I mean, just look at the core disagreements. When it came to territory, the Kremlin wanted total control of the Donbass and recognition of everything they'd annexed. Ukraine's red line? Never. Absolutely no recognition. On NATO membership, Russia wanted a neutral Ukraine, basically neutered as a military threat. Ukraine, on the other hand, insisted on its right to choose its own alliances. And on military capacity, Russia demanded demilitarization. Ukraine said, no way, we will not accept limits on our ability to defend ourselves. There was just zero middle ground. And really, when you boil it all down, it comes back to this incredibly powerful and clear statement from Ukrainian officials. Our land is not for sale. For them, that was it. A totally non-negotiable principle. Okay, so if you know the talks were basically doomed from the start, you have to ask, what was the point of Putin's threat? Well, this is where we get into the real strategy behind it all. It's a classic move, something experts call coercive diplomacy. So what is that? Coercive diplomacy is basically using threats and intimidation to totally rig the game. You're trying to manipulate the terms of the negotiation to create an atmosphere of fear, to force your opponent into giving you what you want. And Moscow's goals here were definitely layered. On one level, they wanted to fracture the U.S.-European alliance, maybe blame Europe for sabotaging peace. They wanted to put immense pressure on the U.S. envoys right there in the room. But the bigger picture, the real prize, was to use the fear of a wider war to turn their recent battlefield gains into permanent, politically recognized facts, to force the West to accept a new reality on the ground. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Putin added this other, much more chilling layer. He warned that if Europe moved toward war, it could lead to a situation in which there won't be anyone to negotiate with.
Now, across intelligence circles, the interpretation of that was unmistakable. This was a thinly veiled existential threat, a signal that any escalation could be so devastating, we're talking possibly nuclear, that there'd literally be no one left at the table. So, the big question is, did this whole strategy of coercion actually work? Did Europe get scared and back down? The answer, in short, was a resounding no. In fact, the response from NATO was incredibly unified and totally defiant. You can really see the clash of wills here. Putin's threat was, "We are ready right now." And NATO's response, delivered by Secretary General Mark Rutte, was basically, "So are we." He said NATO is ready to protect its 1 billion people. It was a direct, powerful pushback. So in the end, Putin's attempt to intimidate Europe completely backfired. All it did was harden European resolve. It led NATO to officially write down what everyone was already thinking, that the Russian Federation is the most significant and direct threat to allies' security. It just cemented Russia's position as the primary adversary. And what about those talks in Moscow? Well, they stalled, exactly as you'd probably expect. The whole diplomatic effort just ended up confirming what was already painfully obvious, that the gap between what Russia demands and what Ukraine considers its non-negotiable sovereignty, well, that gap is and remains completely unbridgeable. Which, of course, leaves us all with a pretty heavy question. Was diplomacy at a dead end like this? Is Europe now bracing for a whole generation of confrontation? What does that future even look like? Well, that's it from us here at the Global WarWatch Network. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this breakdown valuable, you know what to do. Please give it a like, share it with someone, and definitely subscribe to stay informed. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think is the next move for Europe? Let us know down in the comment section. And hey, come join our community on social media. All the links for that are in the description below. Thanks again for watching.